So the next part of our management system we're going to look at is under competency, or for want of a better term, training, managing training records, training programs, and so forth. I'll start by mentioning that I suppose when the standard came out initially, it was this clause, when it was OSAS 18,000, was called training, awareness, and competence. Okay, and a later iteration became competence, training, and awareness. And now really the focus is around purely, it's really around competence. Obviously, we have the awareness training that we have to do, particularly as we roll out the management system, make people aware of the requirements of what the system is. But the term training per se has nearly become assumed. Okay, it's expected that you have to do training, and there's more emphasis now on saying that people are competent, demonstrating competence, making sure that people in certain roles are competent to do the job, and that includes contractors as well, which makes things a little bit more difficult too. What does competency mean? Well, it's got a legal definition. Competence means that somebody has the appropriate knowledge. Okay, could be maybe from a university course or college or maybe second level, whatever. They might need experience. Okay, and typically when we see jobs, we see that jobs advertised, somebody must have a minimum of 2 or 3 years experience in the role. Okay, and then training. So of course, training is important, but knowledge plus experience plus training, sometimes skills is used interchangeably in there. That means that somebody is competent. So if we're clear about that, we should know, okay, that's the level of detail we want to get down to. Now, how if we're thinking about training to begin with, how can we identify training needs? Well, one of them is if you look at the presentation I did about how a management system works, pretty soon you know who the employees are, because obviously people are being paid a wage. You then will come in, you look at what jobs they're doing, okay, job titles and so forth, what tasks they're performing. That gets a little bit more hairy in terms of knowing specifically what tasks people are always doing. There might be SOPs or standard operating procedures against some of these tasks. And after that, then we're able to build up an organizational chart, okay, and typically that would have the general manager or a site director up top, and then we'd have maybe managerial level, supervisor or team lead level, and so forth going through. So we'll have roles and responsibilities, and all this information kind of helps come together and help us identify what training is required. So coming through, as I said, in the organizational chart, then we have different job titles, and associated with that, then we should look at and see what training is required. Now, the key thing to note here as well is some people may have 2 job titles. Okay, so you might be a warehouse operator, but you might also be a first aider. And the first aider will have certain, I suppose, training requirements that are separate from the jobs that might be involved in the warehouse, driving forklifts and loading trucks and so forth as well. So just try to keep that in mind as well. So when we're setting up our training program, we might do it by area, or we might do it by job title as well. What other area? How else do we identify training needs? Well, risk assessment is the core one. Okay, so if you're not clear why, go back and do the risk assessment module inside there. But we have hazards, okay, things that cause us harm. The risk is high, medium, or low, for example, prioritizing hazard, and the controls are eliminate, substitute, engineering, admin, training, monitoring, PP. So we have training as a control measure, and it's a hugely important. So when we have hazards, we have controls, and one of them is training over here. So a hugely important part of the system. So what do we need to do? Well, obviously identify. So one of them is the organization chart I mentioned. One is risk assessment. The next one would be if there have been accidents, for example, you'd certainly use that information. You might also have changes in legislation, change management, and so forth. So that there are a range of things that could come in and help you, I suppose, identify training needs. What do you need to do? Well, you have to do the training courses. So you're going to have to come up and identify, I suppose, have the paperwork now in place to come in and help you to put together your management system. So we want to have, if you like, maybe a form that gets filled out on the day to say people attended the training, okay? And the key thing, though, about attending training is it just proves somebody has a pulse. They're alive. They can sign a piece of paper. Okay, that's what it is. We really want to be sure though that, you know, people understood the training, and the standard itself goes into that, but there are other standards out there in terms of how you manage training courses, and how you manage training as a thing. Excellence through people is one, and their focus, they do a lot more work specifically than I suppose what's even mentioned in the ISO 45000 standard. But in our own course, we tend to go through and teach you some of these extra requirements as well, over and above the ISO standard. So go put together your training needs, put together a list of all the training courses that need to happen, okay? Then we start delivering it. So if you like, the second phase now is the management of these training programs. Certain courses like manual handling will typically have a frequency of every 3 years. Some other courses might be 4 years, some other might be 5 years, some might be a once-off lifetime course. You need to know the frequency of your courses. And then once you do that, you have to figure out who the employees are, when they need to do the training, and come up with your matrix. Okay, so you're going to have planned training. Okay, you're going to have training that's done, people are up to date. You'll have training that somebody missed, maybe they're out sick, or they've gone over it was valid for 3 years, it's not valid anymore. So we'll have training that's now overdue, planned training for the next quarter, and so forth. So it gets a little bit messy and hairy managing all these training records. But again, we'll have other tools later we can show you to help you, I suppose, to keep sane and to keep sense insight in that process overall as well. Use traffic lights where possible. So as we deliver the training course, okay, we get people to sign that they attended the training course, and then maybe course evaluation forms are good as well, to make people, I suppose, give their feedback to how was the trainer, were they happy, how was the environment, and so forth. So there's other bits and pieces we can build in to, rather than just saying, you know, score the course out of 10. There's other factors that we can glean from the participants' feedback as well. But it is important that we do get feedback, and and you won't do this for all courses, but certainly for a good few courses, you're going to want that person to give some level of feedback, maybe out of a score of 10. Okay, we told you it was chemical training. We told you in advance that you're going to basically, you know, you're going to learn about safety data sheet, 3-4 about PPE, so forth. How do we do? And you give the person, and if they're happy with that, then okay, great. If they're not, you may need to look at a couple of options, like maybe the trainer didn't do a good job, or the person just couldn't understand it, and you may look at having to redo certain training courses again, and so forth. But you'll have that information. Okay, so that's what the standard is. So we can move forward now to actually looking at the technical details of, I suppose, inside in the standard, and let's see what the ISO 45000 wants. So you may be doing more than this today. That's perfect. Just make sure from the purposes of getting certified for ISO 45000, you cover all the bases that are included inside here as well.